And we're going. Hello, everyone, and hello, Elliot. Apologies for the many-week hiatus. Life has been lifing. Summer has been busy. It's been good. Me and Elliot have been quite productive, both in our public and in our project lives. But unfortunately, we haven't been recording for a bit. So we're back. Elliot, sounds like you're doing good. I hope you're doing good. We were hashing shit out before we recorded. Mystery Men is what we're talking about today. Really kind of like a meta-modern movie masterpiece. I'm trying to put even more alliterations in there, but Mystery Men. Late 90s, amazingly funny, I think. Superhero comedy, whatever you want to call it, kind of movie. Elliot, had you seen this movie before? I'm curious.
No, I had not. It would have been right over the plate of the kind of movies that my dad would have found funny, my mom would have found abhorrent, like, just like visibly like, oh, this is gross. Like, not even like ideologically Christian, we're against this. This is like, why would you even who would want to watch this, right? Type of thing. But it would not be edifying for children.
Oh, Lord. I think it's
right.
Quite edifying. Yeah, it's got this really cool. I mean, this is two elder millennials reminiscing about the good old times. There is something really fun about late 90s, early 2000s, pre 9/11 movies, because they have this cool kind of like 60s throwback, right? The 60s were big in the late 90s, but then it's also kind of like Eurotrash meets Fincher-esque angles, but then it's funny. Eddie Izzard.
Well, so there's a lot of Eddie Izzard's
Eddie
in there.
Izzard plays a fucking disco gangster. You can't make movies like that today. They wouldn't let that happen. They'd put Eddie in there, but they'd have to use, it'd just be like, oh.
Well, the real issue too is that like they might put all that stuff in there, but they would fail to make the deep, interesting points that they do make with the disco gangsters.
Yeah, disco gangsters. CeeLo Green is in it. I don't know if did you see CeeLo in there? I was like, oh, that's right, he's in this movie. Michael Bay is in it as well as another gangster. So
I was kind of stunned by how many, because I don't know any actors ever, period. But I was pretty surprised by how many actors I knew from this.
Yeah, and we do have to say he's right there. R.I.P. to one of the greats. He was in this movie, unfairly maligned throughout his career. Paul Reubens, Pee Wee Herman, recently passed. So, regardless of how you feel about him, I do think unfairly maligned, very funny. Pee Wee's Playhouse is a very funny show. We've referenced Chomby before on the show, so we'll reference it again. He plays the spleen. This is one of these movies where, it is really like you make a good point. Maybe it could be made today, but it would be so radically deconstructed and then never built back up that it would just be, I don't know, like it would be like a self-referential Marvel deconstruct thing on Disney Plus is what it would be.
So without diving too deep immediately into the movie, because, it was interesting because I'm watching the movie. And if I'm being totally honest, right, a lot of the nostalgia doesn't hit me because I'm on the 90s side of the elder millennial. So I didn't really pick up as much of the 80s stuff that it's clearly satirizing. Like all of the Blade Runner stuff would have been totally lost on me. Because remember, when this movie came out, I'd be max like 10. Right. You see what I mean?
You are younger than I. You are younger.
Exactly.
Than
so I could not have possibly appreciated this movie until until it was already nostalgia bait for somebody like you, probably, which again is totally just to point out. Right. Yeah. Which is just to point out, I still appreciated it though, even though I was like, okay, this movie isn't like directed at me at that time, but at the same time, I'm totally picking up on a lot of like, the 90s is really where metamodernism really started off. But it's interesting because it's not just metamodern. It's also, I was noting that this is kind of the last time that actual real America, not in a Trumpy way, but in like a, this is what the Trumpy people are talking about, is represented in movies. So, you know, the shoveler and his wife, right? That relationship is so real, right?
Yeah.
So real, especially at the point where they're having the pool party, right?
I love the pool party.
No, that was fucking awesome, right? And the thing that I was pointing out, or that I was thinking, is like, damn, they would not show an accurate middle America family neighborhood like that ever again, where there's just random shit in the yard, right? Like, you know, like fucking that, either that yard does not exist anymore, or it's never shown on movies, because that's how it was, right? You look like, it looks like they're taking the piss, like in terms of an idiocracy thing, but it's like, no, dude, that was a neighborhood.
AstroTurf pool. Yeah,
like that was a life that a lot of middle American people did, and it seems sort of weird to a lot of millennials now, because it's weird to see like this guy who is in his middle ages, has kids, married, and they have a pool, right? Like, and they've got random shit in the yard, so it's like, wait, these guys are low class, but they have a pool? Like, what? Like, how is this rich person? It's like, no, he didn't have to be rich back then. You see, it is pre 9/11, pre crazy ass inflation, pre 2008 housing crisis shit. Like, you know, so all of these factors kind of conflagrate together. And again, a lot of the stuff seems weird and cheesy to nowadays, where like he's talking to the waitress, right, who's clearly out of his league, right? And another thing that I just really bumped on was bowling ball chick, right? Like
Janine
her
Garofalo.
Garofalo just telling the kind of creepy fart guy just never no, and him just kind of being okay with it, and her just being okay with just saying a firm no, doesn't happen anymore. Impossible.
Well, now we have She-Hulk
in their head about everything.
Now it's just a She-Hulk shit show, and they make a whole show about it where it's one fucking scene, one line in one scene dealt with.
Right. And she would have been punching the Chad, right? As opposed to the weird nerd guy who would never be creepy, right? And that's the thing, is like the 90s is the last time where people are able to be pockmarked and have a heart of gold, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like nowadays, you have to, you either are attractive and have a heart of gold, or you're attractive and evil, right? Like there's no ugly people allowed, or if they're ugly, they better be woke. You know what I mean? Like,
there's the like, blue hairs. The blue hairs are a dime a dozen. But it's all dude, like it was so great. Just as a little bit of our own meta-ness here. I watched the film before Elliott, and then I could tell Elliott when you were watching it, because I get DMs from you about this. I'm like, oh, he's watching it now. These kind of like nuggets of Elliott wisdom. I'm just like, oh, he's watching it. Yeah. What do you think? Isn't it great? Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. No, if it makes you feel any better, if it does make you feel any better. So I'm a little bit older than you. I remember when this came out. I remember, here we go, old time member berries. Ready, everyone? Take the member berries in your hand, place them in your mouth, and start to chew. I remember renting this movie from the video store and then watching it on VHS. Ooh. So that is, and it wasn't the Blockbuster, it was our local video store. It was the independent, cool, weird video store. And you know, my distinct memory of this movie was like, that was a fun movie, because I watched it as like as a middle schooler, being like, wow, that's a fun movie. And like, I think I kind of got like, oh, clearly they're making fun of superheroes, but they're kind of great, right? Like, it's kind of great at the same time. Like, they're cool superheroes, they're weird. Like, yeah, the shoveler. I'm like, well, I kind of want to be the shoveler. The shoveler's pretty cool. It looks like he has a pretty good life. But watching it now, the nostalgia only hit me now, if it makes you feel any better. So
no. And
so even for me, it took watching it in my 30s to really get the nostalgia of what it was like. But then also, I mean, similar insights that you've just been sharing, where you're like, yeah, like you could just kind of have these things. Yes. And that wasn't unheard of, right? Just because there's superheroes doesn't mean you couldn't have a pool in the lawn. Now, we didn't have a pool in the lawn, nor did we want one. But like, oh,
Well,
like
and
have
to
a
be clear,
lawn.
just because they're losers, you couldn't have pool in the lawn. But we'll get down that analysis path sooner. But
Right. But like you could, it wasn't like everyone was rich, but you could, yeah, very well said. You could be working class and have working class values and still kind of have something and not be like, holy shit, can we afford groceries this month because the prices all jumped, right? Like it is a different world. And I watched it with my wife and I just kept saying to her, pre 9/11, I kept I was like, pre 9/11, this was like, you just could make these jokes or you could have these aspirations for your life. It is kind of one of these things. I know it's a little bit memey, but I probably should make this meme where it's like just a picture of mystery men, like this background, for example, and it's like, remember what they took from you. Like, I kind of want to make that be like, remember what they took from you, right? Like that you could have like the goofy part of this movie is the superheroes. It's not like the life they're leading in a way, right? Like, feels like, well, you can have a life like that. There just happen to be superheroes. So.
Well, so okay. See, I'll kind of dive in a little bit on. So, okay, the premise of the movie is that, and again, this is where it becomes sort of MetaModern, honestly, right? But where these guys are a ragtag group of 5 hilariously like poorly thought out in the movie. They're well written as a movie, right? But in the movie, poorly thought out, like, fucking superhero characters, right? Like, they're trying to save the day, but they're totally incompetent. They don't know what they're doing. They're basically just a group of friends trying to like do something, right? But like, they're just not able to do it. And the reason, the thing is, it doesn't really matter if they win or lose at the end of the day, because all the major villains have already been, the floor has already been mopped with hero guy, and he is all fucking, he's got all the endorsements. He looks like a NASCAR driver, right? And he's thinking, man, I'm losing endorsements. What do I do? And they're like, well, you need a villain, right? And so this is why it couldn't be made post 9/11, because it's predicting 9/11, right? Like, this is literally 9/11 happening, right?
Dude,
like, regardless whether you think it's an inside job or not, right?
Obviously Alex Jones gif, tinfoil hat. Yeah, dude.
No, but I'm saying,
kind
like,
of is.
Who funded Al Qaeda? We funded Al Qaeda, right? Yep. Like, fucking, it's literally like the larger narrative of this is that the hero lets the villain out and then just gets creamed by the villain, because the villain isn't playing the cosmic, good God versus bad God. He is playing to win, right? And by the way, that's where the boomers, as the good guys letting the wokes out of the insane asylum, are getting their ass handed to them, because they're like, hold on, this was a game we were playing. And the wokes are just raffle stomping the boomers, right?
Yep.
But anyway.
Yeah, no, Greg Kinnear is Captain Amazing. These names, Captain Amazing. And then fucking Jeffrey Rush is Casanova Frankenstein. Only in the 90s do these names work, and I love all of them. I love them, all of them. But holy crap.
And he's so swashed. Like, I love him.
With his Coke spoon nail that he can slash your throat open with. I mean, it's just amazing, weird shit. But dude, it's full on Alex Jones moment there with like the dude. It kind of weirdly predicts U.S. foreign policy for the next 20 plus years.
Well, and it notes how it really puts the hammer right on the head of, or it nails right on the head of, like, fucking the previous foreign policy causing the blowback that ended up fucking everything up, right? So what's interesting about the 5 non-heroes, right, is that they're trying to be superheroes, but they haven't earned it. And I think that is what I would say is this movie is, it's them earning the heroism, if that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
I wrote a couple of things down, right? And then I'll shut up and let you do some stuff for a while. Yeah.
Oh no, I talk too much.
Which is to say, I'll just read my notes verbatim, the ones that you were saying I was texting you that made you new. So the first thing that I thought of was The Boys, right? The Boys is the 2020 version of this, which, by the way, is the whatever it was, 80s version of Watchmen, right? Like, it's like every generation has done basically this version of that, of like, LOL, what even are superheroes nowadays, right? And so, you know, and so I was like, man, this is from a different time, because I remember some of this time. I put ideology versus reality. I don't remember what that's about. Comical Watchmen, and then the mysterious guy training is very occult, right? Like, yeah, the Sphinx, right? Like, well, of course, it's literally a Sphinx, right?
Played by the incomparable, amazing, and massively undervalued Cherokee American actor Wes Studi, one of my favorite actors, actually.
Oh, so he was Cherokee and not Chinese. Okay,
is amazing. I am a Wes Studi. I might be the only one in existence, but I'm a Wes Studi fanboy. Every single movie he does, I try to watch. I haven't seen all of them, but I try to watch as many of Wes Studi's films as I can, because I really like him as an actor. Also, he's a native Oklahoman, like, just, he's a cool guy. He speaks fluent Cherokee and English. He's a cool guy.
Wow.
He's just a cool guy. And he was
he was having a lot of fun too.
Yeah, and also they put him in this weird role where he's kind of like, again, back in the 90s when you could do this, he's sort of playing two type. He's Cherokee, so he's like the stoic, like, wisdom bringer, but then he's nothing Native American themed at all. He's like the Sphinx,
Chinese
themed, like Egyptian or something like that. But then everything he says is just a rewording of what somebody else. It's like chiasmic sayings, and you're like, what is this guy doing? I love it.
Like, it's making fun of, like, the faux well, and this was a joke at the time, right? Which was the, you cannot cross the road until the road crosses you, right? Like, that kind of, like, faux, like, pig Latin parable. What's funny though is that even though he's taking the piss, it's like, actually every single one of these is unironically very good. And it's funny because that's a sort of training montage where the rest of the group is just leaning into the training montage, even though they all know it's corny, because the advice is just very good. Yeah. Like, basic advice is corny, but it's also correct.
Until you learn to master your rage will master you. I mean, it is actually true.
Right. It's trite, but it's not wrong.
It's totally true. Yeah.
So
they're making their costumes
and they're literally sewing. And that was the moment that really was like, this guy is a cult, because one of the guys who is really an expert, I would say, within the US at the very least, in the Kabbalah, or the Tree of Life Kabbalah, and a lot of the stuff around that, he says, and grimoires and stuff like that, he says, look, you don't have to believe in anything spooky for magic to work. Think about the way that magic works. How do you get an eye of newt? You got to go out, you got to go trap and catch a newt. And then you got to fucking skin and you got to slaughter the newt, right? And then you have to preserve its eye. And then you got to go out and you have to split a yew tree wood. So you got to go learn how to chop a tree. And by the time you've actually crafted this fucking talisman, you've learned like 6-7 different very useful wilderness survival skills, right? So the magic was the lessons we learned along the way.
We've gone even more woo than I can handle here, but I think I get the underlying. Correct. Yeah, no, I understand what you mean. Yeah, no,
yes.
The journey is the destination. Is that what you're trying to say to me, Elliott?
I mean, it's really unfortunate, but I mean, it is actually true. Like,
well, as
the problem is the hippies have lost the destination entirely.
I think they've lost it. Yeah, no. Hey, Christians follow the way, and so we can get that. I can jump on board with that, at least as long as we can talk about a journey, right? Yeah.
Yes.
No, but it's a good point that, like, triteness should be laughed at, but shouldn't be scoffed at, right? Like, you can laugh at it and get that it's like wink, wink, nudge, nudge, yes, but maybe it's trite for maybe the laughter is because it's so simple, right? Like, there's the simple truths of the world, and wisdom oftentimes comes across as what stupid people believe because it's not always overly intricate, but that's because it's profoundly true. and profound truths oftentimes unmask things and kind of show you how little you actually follow them, and so then you feel a bit like maybe a child. And then, right, you don't like being talked down to like a child, but it's like, well, but maybe you're like Mr. Furious. Maybe you need to be
Mhm.
talked down to like a child to receive things like a child. This is my Lutheran take on this, is like, oh yeah, like childlike faith, like a willingness to laugh at oneself, a willingness to not take oneself too seriously, right? It's like he's got a ton of fury and power in that, but he just refuses. It never works right because he's he doesn't he's calling himself Mr. Furious, but like then act like it, right? Be ridiculous. But he's unwilling to
Well,
do.
right. Well, and he's the only one in the group who doesn't like have any doubts in his abilities. Everybody else in the group is kind of like, yeah, I could improve. And so when they find somebody who can improve, man, they're very excited. But like he doesn't think he can improve because here's the thing, he's already at the top of his dominance hierarchy. And he doesn't deserve to be at the top of the dominance hierarchy because he doesn't even have a fucking power. He's just angry, which is not a fucking power. And we see like how he is the least effective team member the entire time. He's getting in the way. Like he's not actually contributing. And so like he's not deserving to be at the top. And so when another guy is coming in to like help up level the whole organization, right? Fucking he freaks out and walks away because he's like, oh, I'm being replaced by this guy who is better than me than everything. It's like, well, no, dude, you just need to be humble. And it's not like this guy is trying to take you out of your power structure, right? He's trying to make you, he's trying to keep you in line with where the power structure is going to be because they won't need you unless you grow, but they do need you and they need you to grow, right?
Yeah, and I think, and I mean, I think spoiler alert, watch the movie. It's a great movie. At the end, I think he's yeah, he doesn't have an overt power, but it actually kind of still ends up working for him because anger properly used can be quite good, assuming you're applying it to the situation in a way that's appropriate and is effective, and not just trying to rip a hood ornament. The scene where he's trying to rip the hood ornament off and can't is still one of my lasting memories of this movie because it's so funny. It's just Ben Stiller, full physical comedy attempting to pull like it's great. It's just, yeah,
no,
but
like, well, and once again, I cannot, like, I'm sorry, everybody, and I know that everybody, like literally researching postmodern theorists and all these people have permanently sort of ruined movies for me, right? Because like actually now I can see all this shit, and it's a really douchey thing to say, but it's actually true. Of like, it's really interesting how the Gen X guy, right, is trying to rip the symbol of the car off of the boomer's car and failing because he is focused on the symbology and not the fucking engine. Like they could have had him dead to rights right there if they weren't so focused on winning in the world of signs and symbology, right? Like fucking
very good insight.
insufferable postmodern insight, but it's fucking true though.
It
You
is
know what
true,
I mean? Like, yeah.
but the movie doesn't. But this is why this is a MetaModern movie, and I think you would agree. It doesn't leave us with that, right? It says
Exactly.
all that
Yes.
postmodernism kind of doesn't really work in the end. So
Yes.
the Sphinx is like, so what are you gonna do?
Yeah. And so he teaches them, hey, we're going to make you new, cohesive, better suits. This is important because it's important to be together as a team. Everything he does, it operates at the level of symbology and of reality.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's that's actually a really good point, and I've always found that scene funny, but that's probably perhaps why, it's only from talking to you, Elliot, that I've gotten that yeah, he's symbol focused and not substance focused, whereas well, obviously the Sphinx, but everyone else who's listening to the Sphinx is really more substance focused. I mean, particularly people like, Invisible Boy. I mean, he's just happy to be here, and he's only invisible when you're not looking. That's he's like I think Invisible Boy might be the humblest out of all of them, because and then when he goes invisible, he becomes his clothes fall off. We don't know why, but and then he's completely right. Like he has like weirdly the most humble power.
Well,
out of
because
all of
I mean, yeah, that's obviously
and it's Kel from Kenan and Kel. I was like, holy shit, Nickelodeon. Yes, I forgot about that too. I was like, is that Kel? Yes. So sorry, but yeah,
well,
like,
no.
yeah, he's literally invisible. Like his powers are invisible, like in all senses of the word, right? You really never see them. It's like, what is he doing here? But he's wonderfully happy to be part of this team, right? He's because his family life is like, hi dad, I'm going into my room with these strange men or whatever the line is. And his dad like is just watching the TV because it's just like complete boomer blank out, no real substance. Like this is his like actual real relationships, and he's just happy to be here and like he's going to contribute. And then he ends up, slight spoiler, like kind of saving the day because he's only invisible when people aren't looking. And wouldn't you know that there's a time where you actually need somebody like that. So, but he doesn't put himself on to be anything more, right? Like he's just, I'm invisible boy. And
Well,
how do you know you're invisible when no one's looking? I feel it. He's actually
well,
like in tune with his power.
well, right. Like he's in tune with his power, and his power is quite, in a certain way, pretty sad and depressing. Of like, okay, you're talking about somebody who is good-hearted, good-natured, and is just ignored by the people who ought to love him, right? Is really, not to explain the obvious, right? But maybe it's not obvious. I don't know. I love the Invisible Boy is great. It's hilarious because he kind of bootstraps the whole fucking thing, right? Okay, right. So the thing that I really like about this movie is that it does, again, during the 90s, this point got really boring, and it was a whole trope of like, oh yeah, you gotta have one of each possible variety of everybody, right? But now in this day, when like ironically diversity has become completely homogenized, right? You really do miss messages like this where they're like, no, it is important that you genuinely build social groups that are genuinely diverse, right?
Yeah, totally. No, I
yes, even the creepy dude has a place in a diverse group, right? Like fucking,
there's a
yes,
room
he's
for
unsavory,
spleen.
but as long as he is not a jerk, right? There's a room for spleen, right? And it's like, and as long as he doesn't overstep, and as long as fucking the rest of the social group, like, it's fine. There's a room for the angry guy. There's a room, there is room for everybody, and for everybody to be genuinely different and yet cohesive as a whole. And that's what the 90s thought right now is going to be. And unfortunately, it ended up being different, as we now know.
Oh man, 9/11 just really that's what really, like, from while watching it, but also from talking to you, just both of them, it made me feel, I know it's like, okay, kind of like whatever, like obviously a tons of people lost their lives in unnecessary wars and in 9/11 itself. I'm not going to downplay that, but it is also just like the cultural loss. And I'm not saying that Mystery Men is some shining like high culture stuff. It's not, but it's emblematic, as we've been saying, of a time where there was some real kind of like optimism.
Well, the point I would make is exactly that point, which is to say,
like we lost the optimism.
Interesting. It's interesting because it is not the pinnacle movie of the 90s. That this is kind of, I mean, I would say it's above average, but it's somewhere around like an average movie. You see what I mean? Like, it's like, what's more interesting in the culture isn't the most superlative examples of each thing of the culture, but what was ordinary. And this is the ordinary attitude of the 90s, which is a kind of like, hey guys, like, because the 80s was a little bit macho, it's a little bit grungy, and you see that they make fun of that, where like the first half of the movie was very Blade Runner and everything is dark. Like, this was a movie I was like, damn, movies used to be way like actually like in terms of the lighting, darker. I had to like turn off lights and like close, like, just the range of color, like of value, right? If you're familiar with that art term of value, between like dark and light, was just way broader. And you're like, this is a more visually interesting movie than the kind of like, beige. I mean, this is the issue, right? Is like, that movie is almost overwhelming in terms of the amount of colors and stuff. And welcome to the 90s, y'all. But like, now we've gone to this sort of everything being beigified, and it's very boring.
Right? Yeah, no, it's very boring. Like, everything is too white. I say this with all the love in my heart for Christopher Nolan. I really like him as a filmmaker, but I'm not even going to watch Oppenheimer in the movie theater because I'd like to be able to hear for the rest of my life. Everything is too loud. Everything is too bright. There's no, it's not that you can't be loud and you can't be bright, but there's no differentiation. It's all very homogenized, which brings us back into what we were talking about earlier with the way not just the way the movie looks, but with the storytelling. It is actually, I think it's actually more, at least in terms of character types, more diverse. Like, and you got, let's not forget, one of the greatest American singers of all time, I contend, motherfucking Tom Waits is the inventor dude, their Q, who gives them the fancy non-lethal shit. Fucking Tom Waits. Like, who is more uniquely sounding as, like, just as a person, like as a musician? I really like Tom Waits. Like, they just throw random people, it feels random, right? Like when I was watching this again, it's like, oh my gosh, this person's in it, that person's in it. It's just, I don't know, it's fascinating that, like, they're willing, it feels random to us in sort of our weird, like, super depressing postmodern world, but it's not random. I think it's designed to really show that, like, you could have all sorts of people, like, kicking around and they're all working together random, like, it doesn't work on paper, but it somehow works in practice. I don't know, I really don't know, like, if you could make a movie like that today. I don't know. But yeah, like, Tom Waits, you know, people might have seen him. I mean, I know he was in a couple movies. He played Renfield in the Francis Ford Coppola's Dracula film. Did a good job in that. But yeah, it's like they just throw him in there. I don't know. So there's just like fun little Easter eggs of people and references and things like that, just thrown around. So yeah, I don't know. It's just, again, I know we keep saying this, but I'm just trying to, like, really think about, like, could this movie be made today? And I just don't think it could. I just don't think we have the I think, like, we just don't have, maybe weirdly to say, the patience for something that sort of is this kooky. I think it's like, you know, people there's just highly formulaic types of storytelling that we've just become very used to. Even for those of us, I think, such as both of us, who really dislike that. I mean, you still expect it. You're like, oh yeah, okay, right. Like, here we go, the Marvel thing, and then they're gonna jump, and then they're gonna blah, and then it's gonna be like the intersectional thing, and then they're gonna, like, change their ways. So I don't know. I just don't think I just don't think you could make this today. And I think that there is more of a I weirdly think there's more of a tolerance for diversity in character types in the 90s.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. Anyhow, yeah. But I don't know, and that's sad to me, I think, and not in some, like, and definitely not in a woke way, but just like, like, we just don't care. Like, people just they want to be, like, force fed the pre-digested narrative, and, like, that's what we're okay with, and we all kind of accept it in a way. We're all,
well, so you know, it's interesting, right? And you know, I mean this kind of as a metaphor, hashtag get wrecked token, but in terms of, like,
be careful, sir. I will draw steel. If you be careful what you say. I'll let you continue, but be very careful.
No. So it's a bit of a metaphor, which is to say that, you know, I hear that chicken nuggets are loved by the tismal side of life because it is consistent. It's exactly the same mouthfeel every single time, right? And it doesn't really taste like anything, which is fine because you just pick out the dipping sauces that you want, right? And there you
sauce.
Right, like the sauce is 100% the spice, and it's been the same for decades and decades, and never changes, never will changes. Like that right there, it's the chicken nuggification of everything, right? Like,
well, yeah, yeah, and so metamodernness. Let's actually, like, you want to get transition to that? Like, what
yeah, go ahead.
What to you, in your estimation? I have many ideas, but what in your estimation makes this I view, feel free to disagree, I view this as a very, very meta-modern kind of story. but I'm curious as to what you thought about that, because so that's how I kind of had to harangue you a little bit. I had to politely harangue you to be like, dude, I think you like this movie. It's actually pretty meta-modern. Check it out. So
Well, wasn't it
you seem to agree.
So the issue is that I thought you were talking about a different thing, which was an X-Files episode. So that was my bad.
I still contend that was MetaModern too, but we'll maybe come back to that at some
but
point.
I think we agree on that too, actually, in retrospect. I think you talked me into it. Because I re-looked up all the definition of MetaModern, and I was misunderstanding some finer points, to be fair. So I will admit.
That's fine.
But I think
but Mystery Men,
I
what
think
in your estimation is MetaModern about it? Because I think I see it everywhere, but I'm curious about
totally. So I think one maybe pithy way of like defining metamodernism, and there's a little bit more to it than this, I think, but like, is that whereas postmodernism is sort of deconstructionism for its own sake, metamodernism is deconstruction with a purpose, right? So this movie is a deconstruction of the standard hero tropes, right? And what it means to be a hero, for the purpose of reinforcing the notion of heroicism, right, in a more stable grounding than previously, right? Because previously, the notion of a superhero got captured by, say, branding, right? By the fact that once it burns through all the big bads, how does big scale heroism perpetuate itself, right? That's sort of the big question that this movie poses at the beginning, and then solves through it's everyday people learning to be heroes, man. It's not the one big central government, if I'm going to be libertarian about it for a half second, right? That comes, swoops in and just keeps saving the day all the time, right? And this was a thing that was in the air with like the internet and all that stuff, right? But that's not really the MetaModern point.
All that, late 90s.
The MetaModern point is like, hey, the current notion of superhero isn't working anymore. What can we do to salvage this category by deconstructing it and then reconstructing it into what we need right now? That, in my mind, is the difference between is that reconstruction piece, like you say. It leaves us with hope at the end.
Yeah, no, it leaves us with hope, unlike all the Marvel schlock that's like, yeah, but Captain America was the patriarchal white male, and you're like, holy fucking shit. Well, why am I watching this?
He's literally from a different era.
He's literally
right?
What?
Like that's his
and
whole
I like
thing.
How the first Captain America movie is like he fights Nazis, and now we're like he needs to like check his privilege, and you're like, so much for caring about punching Nazis in the face. All I'm saying, interesting how quickly that we're gonna forget about that, right? Well, that was in the past, like he needs to care about, like, this dude is a super soldier who's like taking on fucking Nazi occult people, and you care about like his attitude. It's like, oh wow. Yeah.
Well, the thing is that they give him, I don't know exactly what you're talking about because I haven't looked at the current day Marvel thing, but they purposefully, I mean, the thing is that what's really infuriating about that sort of stuff, right, is that the writers make these people into these bumbling idiot sock puppets when it's like, dude, we have examples of guys who are unambiguously laudable even to woke people, and they refuse to write because, again, it's a choice for them because they're the writers. They refuse to write the characters like that, and so it really is a cynical choice in that case.
Totally. And as I've said before, I think I said it on the I was recently on the did another crossover episode with Thought Criminal. Maybe I'll link to that in the notes. As I recently said on Thought Criminal, and this is why I'm just gonna say it. Can the writer's strike go on ad infinitum?
Please.
Could we have lots of more? Can we make it go longer? Do you know how? Can we, Elliott, do you have any ideas? Because it's Elliott, since they have the writer's strike, there's no more late night TV bullshit. There's no more Jimmy Kimmel. There's no more Jimmy Fallon. There's none of that. Doesn't the world feel like there's a weight lifted off of it? Can we keep them on strike longer?
No, well, Disney and all the studios have pushed back all of the sludge, by like years,
Yeah,
like it's actually
they're
going
gonna
in an
lose
immensely
money.
positive direction.
Elliot, the studios are gonna lose money too. Oh
Yeah,
my
yeah, yeah.
gosh, I'm
Like
so excited.
massive money.
I'm so
Well, they
excited.
were already losing money before the writers' strike. Let's be clear. Like all of these productions were real bullshit. You know what I mean? Like
Oh,
none
true.
of them were actually paying off, right? Like,
Can they lose harder? Is there a way? Is it
yes.
possible? I mean, I don't want to ask for too much of a good thing, but geez.
No, no, but the funny thing is that Michael Malice pointed out to somebody that, strikes work because the people striking matter and the world stops without them.
Well said.
Notice that literally nothing has happened in the writer's strike. And in fact, many things have greatly improved.
Oh, yeah.
So it's almost like striking is completely superfluous for these people. And you got to love, like, the thing that the writers are grumpy about is that they're like, hey, I used to be able to make a middle class American income on my job, and now I can't. And it's like, fucking welcome to the rest of the economy,
Well, yeah,
motherfucker.
welcome to the rest of
Right?
us.
Like,
Yeah.
like you can do gig work too, like everybody else. Right. And I get it. Like the way that, streaming things or structuring stuff is making it so that nobody gets what they want. But, honestly, these writers, like, they're the writers. Like, really, though, why do they need any of the other people? Everybody else in the thing is technical. Well, literally everybody else who is a creative person has gone to a Patreon model.
Yeah.
There's, they're the only artists who don't.
Which the Patreon model is simultaneously modern, postmodern, and pre-modern. Because they used to have patrons of artists back in the day. And now it's not just the great men of history that can be patrons. Even normal people can be patrons.
Yeah, exactly, right. Like it's the Renaissance for the modern era.
Well,
and
it
so
is,
hilariously,
and Renaissance. It's also a Renaissance for, if I may, because we're talking about comic books and superheroes. Yep. Does anyone here like Rippaverse comics? Eric July, Isom, #2 just came out. I'm excited to read it. It's been sitting on my shelf for a couple days now. So like, comics are like getting better because there's this finally sweeping the crap out. And it's just and so like, yeah, more of these strikes, more of the industry shut down, because then like actual people who care about the idea of a hero can actually make a story about the idea of a hero. What a concept.
Right. Exactly. Right.
Shout out to Eric July. Everyone check out Rippaverse. It's really quite good. I'm not even a huge superhero fan, and I really enjoy it. So there you go.
So hilariously, these guys who are out there striking, right, are trying to salvage the capitalist model of creative writing, as opposed to embracing the current model, right, which is not necessarily capitalist in the classical sense of the definition, right? In the Marxist sense of the definition, right? It's a peer-to-peer network of people who enjoy the value that writers and creators give. And the thing is that honestly, like, everybody has been bored with the overproduction of everything. Like, if you go back and look how much money, even in today's dollars, some of the best, what people would say the best movies of all time were, they did not have multi-million-dollar, near billion-dollar budgets, right? They were shoestring budgets with effects that would be cheap, easy, and far more enjoyable for people to have today, to create today. So honestly, everybody is kind of honestly begging for the legacy system to fall down, because it's like, it's not producing good shit anymore. It's producing it's expensive shit, and that's it.
Well, we talked about before we recorded, there's a particular podcast that you've gotten me to start listening to, that I've started backing, and there's only one dimension for you to meet your friends in, Timeline Earth. And like, this is a group of guys who just sit around and make inappropriate jokes about Bitcoin and hobby horse and stuff. And I'm not joking. And I know this is not just me. Most people are like this. I look more forward to my Wednesday Timeline Earth episodes than I do to any sort of, like, with a few exceptions. I am excited about Dune. Dune #2 looks good.
Yeah, me too.
Like,
me too.
With a few exceptions, I look forward more to that than any kind of fucking movie. I'm like, oh my gosh, it popped up. I get the new one, I get the Patreon special. I'm far more excited, and the quality is really quite good. And you're like, oh well, but it doesn't have a multi-billion-dollar budget. I'm like, yeah, but they give a shit.
But the thing is that like with the multi-billion-dollar budget, right? You know what's hilarious about that is that most of that multi-billion-dollar goes into is a lot of CGI effects that when you see it, you're like, I hate this, right? Like, and I'm not even being old about that. I genuinely don't think that. Look, I can prove to you that nobody gives a shit about CGI because the two most popular games of all time, period, by any measurement, are fucking Minecraft and Roblox. Shut the fuck up. Nobody gives a shit about graphics. Graphics were a complete con, and we need to get over it, right? I'm so done with graphics. Graphics have ruined video games, right?
Yeah, I mean, and that's just for video games, right? Some of us like to sit around a table and roll dice and have imaginary adventures. So like that, the graphics of that or whatever your mind, it's the greatest graphics you could ever have.
Exactly.
It's in your brain.
And that again is like just a metaphor for the current time that we're living in, right? Because fucking we're so focused on the graphical side of things, can I fit more pixels into X? Then like what the fuck are we fitting the pixels into the X for? Right? Like speaking of X, right? Like it's interesting too, right? Because I'll say this here kind of for the record. I've said this to other people. I can't remember if I said this to you, Colin, that like in my opinion, the reason, because I've noticed an astonishing sudden resurgence of X's everywhere beyond just Elon rebranding Twitter. It feels like everybody else is going X crazy, and I'm like, oh, like Elon's a Gen Xer. It's like this is a revenge of the X, right? Like this is the Xers, like because you see like the Feinsteins and all that. The Boomers are literally like their power is being removed by death.
I really like this appropriations, but just say I really like it. It's really good. Yes, these are, Sleepy Joe's out there running off to 7-Eleven eating an ice cream cone and they can't find him. I mean, this is, it's like the X is finally entering its own. You got Elon, you got DeSantis, who else? Many others, right? Who are just like, no, we're gonna like make Diet Coke great again. And
well, I think actually Michael Malice is an Xer, isn't he?
He's an Xer, total Xer, yeah.
I mean, he's a Soviet Xer though, so he's a little bit, but still, everybody who's like 50 right now is an Xer. Right.
Yeah. They're getting into the austere section of their life, and now you can look up to them. And I don't know what that means, but hey, I mean.
By the way, speaking of Xers who are, or is he a millennial? Ryan Gosling, right?
He is, I would call him elder millennial. I believe he's early 40s. I would say he's just at the cusp. I'm going to claim him for us because of personal and ideological reasons. I do think he's actually like an elder millennial, and also he's ours. I think he belongs to us. I'd like to think.
I think so too. I think that's fair.
I think he's our guy. He's our guy.
Okay, so there was it. It's not looking like it's Ryan Gosling. There was another actor who is of the general age cohort as us, who like recently became a billionaire because he like built a brand and then sold it, and now he's a billionaire, but he's still an actor. I forget which one it was though. I thought it was Ryan Gosling, but I seem to be mistaken.
No, I mean, maybe he did. I don't know. To this day, Drive remains one of my favorite films of all time, which shows you that I'm a millennial, and that's okay. But yeah, no, it is interesting that X is, I mean, like is really now is now in that position where the Boomers once were. It fills me with some hope because I actually really like overall, like I don't always like their politics, but like culturally, maybe pop, like in terms of pop culture, let's say, I really like Gen X. I mean, I grew up as a millennial, but surrounded by Gen X stuff. My parents were Boomers, but I always gravitated more to X. Maybe just because they were the the one generation older than me, but not my parents. Your parents, right? Like it's like hi mom, not you. But you know what I mean? Like
totally, 100%, 100%.
Yeah. so and so I'm like, you know what? I mean, Doc Martens and like, rainy flannel. Mitch is coming from the Northwest. I'm like, I'm okay with that. Like, I don't have to agree with them on everything culturally or politically, but at least the music will be good. There'll be a lot of like, there'll be a lot of like, cornholio, like, like there'll be a lot of that, right? I don't know. I think it's better than the what we have right now. I mean, I'll take Beavis and Butthead for president any day over what we got now. So I don't know. It does actually fill me with with a little bit of hope. Maybe I'm not going to say they're going to fix the world, but I mean, the Xers to me seem far more reasonable than the vast majority of boomers.
They're not going to fix the world, but at least they'll start contending with the world.
Yeah, or doing something in it. And actually,
right,
like,
they'll be actually able to do something in the world that we actually live in, not fucking yesterday's world that hasn't existed for like our entire lives.
Exactly.
Post 9/11, right?
That
like
too.
That's the thing. It's like there's so much shit that the boomers just were unable to, and I don't even necessarily fault them on every single thing. I know that we go hard against the boomers in general, but like I get it. You get to a certain age, you just can't change, or you didn't grow up in an era of maybe permanent rapid change like your entire life like millennials did, and so you just can't even handle it. I mean, I'm having a difficult time with the amount of change that we're dealing with, and I grew up with like change baby, right? But freaking with the boomers, like they just it's like they forget how much of the world has been totally updated, and it makes it just tough to talk, because you're like, guy, look around. You complain about how things have changed. Haven't you noticed how much it's changed? Like, what the fuck?
Yeah, I do think there are some boomers who you can have that conversation with. There are, in my experience, very few that you can have a real conversation with about how much things have changed. There are some who will, I do think, to give them some credit, I do think most boomers totally 100% grasp everything. They just refuse to admit it.
Well, that's yep. I guess that's one way of putting it. I'm not even saying it's wrong.
They get it, but they just refuse to admit it. And I think they refuse to admit it.
They won't like accept it,
because I feel like they feel like then it will be all their fault. And I think what millennials and I think Z's are also trying to say, and X's to a certain extent, is like, no, it's not that we're blaming you for everything. It's that you refuse to acknowledge that things went south at some point, and holy crap, just at least acknowledge it. And
well,
I think that
real,
is just, I think that's hard because there's this weird kind of bootstrap, pull yourself up, do your own thing that boomers have that's like never really been a part of human societies in the past. It's never really, it was never ever real. It was just, but it was this idea. And I think it was an idea. I actually think of boomers as being, perhaps I'm trying to be compassionate here. I think of boomers as being one of the biggest victims of this idea, of this thing that was pushed down their throats from their parent. I mean, it was somebody else who was doing this. And I think they just swallowed it hook, line, and sinker, and now are like, oh shit. And they don't know what to do. And I think my sort of olive branch to the boomers is, that's okay that you don't know what to do. None of us really know what to do, but can we try to start figuring it out? And so the response is something like,
Right. So my bit of empathy for the boomers goes the following, right? Is that who were the boomers' parents? What was the generation before them? Right? Literally the greatest generation.
Yeah.
Right. Literally the guys who like got to like the generation right before them was contending, rightly or wrongly, contending directly with their stories are all legendary, and they fit directly in with the myth of the 20th century, right? So every single greatest generation person has mythology about them. And unfortunately, we did get some hard-bitten people back from that generation, but the silent generation, like this has been pointed out, and I've been meditating on this recently, which is that, part of the reason why we have soy boys right now is that those are the only boys that could reproduce. All the alpha chats died in the 20s to 40s because they were busy alpha chat, and that's worldwide. It's worldwide. We're all deprived of alphas. Like, we literally don't have any alphas because we killed them all in fucking World War I and World War II, and that's global, everywhere, missing the alpha chats. So
It's
you're like,
sad,
when you're like,
sad
where are the
but
people
true.
who are heroes that are standing up? It's like, dude, they don't exist, man. Like, their entire genetic lineage got fucked, man. Like,
Yeah.
not literally everybody, but there's just not enough to go around right now, is all
Yep.
I'm saying, for critical mass, basically. So the boomers, like, I kind of get it, because it's like, well, how do you top that act? Right? You came after, like, literally the generation that would be talked about, you know, it's sort of like the Napoleonic or the Caesarian or whatever, right? Like, it's tough to follow that. I mean, who was one of the cringiest Roman emperors? The dude right after Augustine. I can't remember if it was Commodus or the other guy.
Well, Commodus is after Marcus Aurelius.
Yeah,
He's
Marcus Aurelius, right? Commodus is really bad, right? Like, he's
Aurelius is kind of great. Yeah. So
yeah, Marcus Aurelius is like literally one of the best Roman emperors of all time. His son, literally the worst Roman emperor of all time. Because how do you top the goat?
There's worse than Commodus, but what's a topic for another day? Commodus is pretty bad though. Yes.
No. Well, I think yeah, right. I'll state it a little bit more carefully, which is that current day Romans at that time certainly would have seen him as the worst one, at least in a long time.
They're living memory for sure. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
Totally. That transition from Aurelius to Commodus would have. I mean, you would have been rough. It would have been pretty rough.
Yeah. And it's not to call boomers Commodus, because they're certainly much better than that.
Oh yeah.
But it's like, that's my bit of empathy, just like you're trying to empathize. I'm like, I get it. It's a tough following act, and so, like, there's this insecurity for a lot of boomers where, like, you know, they're like, well, fuck, I can never measure up, right? And what do they get to measure? How do they measure up? It's like, well, through walking down, in some ways, easy street, right? You know, as millennials came to know, and Gen Xers, to a certain degree, got a little bit of bite in that, because they came after the stagflation of the 70s for the most part, right? So Xers got some of that brunt. And so, you know, the basically the only sin that I would lay at the feet of the boomers is, God damn it, stop driving the car. Give the keys to the Xers already. Christ almighty. Like, you know, that's the thing that just kills me, is all that. I think that every millennial is just past the torch. Not saying we want to never hear from you again. It's just like, fuck, like, this is it's wild. Anyway, so not to continue.
Well, yeah, I mean, this is a topic we should spin this off into something else, because I also think that millennials were never properly trained by boomers to have the torch passed to. It's a whole theory.
Exactly. Yeah. It's a whole hobbly thing. I agree with you, dude.
Yeah.
Like the whole, like, everybody gets a fucking trophy and bullshit, and you know, you can be whatever you want. Like, yeah, man, like, we were trained in degeneracy. Like,
Yep. So let's try to wrap it up as best we can. Mystery Men, your final thoughts.
Good movie. Would recommend. Too many fart jokes for my taste, but you know, that's life. I'm stuffy like that.
You're weirdly selectively stuffy, sir. I
mean, I'm not saying it's correctly stuffy, by the way. I'm just saying.
Elliott is very rational. I am very emotional. He is the Vulcan. I am the Romulan.
Yes.
I fucking love this movie. Watching it again made me feel it's okay to talk about your feelings here, Elliott. If you like. This movie made me feel really good. I mean, all of these, I actually do think legit and real ideological and philosophical insights, generational insights, are there. It's just a really fun movie. It's from an era when you could make fun movies. I really like Ben Stiller. I like movies that he's a part of. I love the cast. The music, All Star. I love that song. You know, it's weird. I heard that song maybe about 6 months ago for the first time in years, and I knew every word. Isn't that interesting how you know every word of the songs that you really like? I remember that song. That song makes me happy, reminds me of driving to football practice with my dad. This movie came out right in that time period when, you know, middle school. And I don't know, it's okay. You know, member berries are only bad if that's all you're eating. Eat a balanced diet, and member berries can be a part of a balanced diet. And I think if you're going to do member berries, there's far worse options for member berries out there. This one's a good one. Mystery Men. I think it's gotten kind of pushed under the rug as a cult film, or as a kind of weird, or it deserves a lot more love. And so, yeah, and hopefully, again, we're the wandering humanists, we kind of equal opportunity stuff. We're trying really hard, at least I'm trying really hard, to get Fred, a very good British friend, Fred, back on the show to talk about another Ben Stiller movie, which I also think is underrated, and in its own way quite profound, Dodgeball. So stay tuned. We'll keep doing more highfalutin, hoity-toity stuff, but I really like pop culture. No shock there. And so these sort of millennial classics that maybe don't get a whole lot of love, and maybe it's time for them to start coming back now that they're around 20 or over 20 years old. I think it's high time for those. So yeah, stay tuned, everyone, for more of these classics from the early 2000s, late 90s. Elliott, do you have anything big that you want to fill people in on? You don't have to, but just in case you had upcoming things. I know you've been busy, but on other avenues, just putting it out there in case there was something new that people.
Well, I'm sure that nobody cares about this, but it's what I'm currently working on for a half second, which is there's this conlang called Anglish, which is attempting to rectify the millennia mistake, which has been norm and occupation of the English language, right? So so what I'm currently doing is I watched this YouTube video where one of the guys was like, hey, we could actually beat Esperanto. Esperanto's a super low bar. And if we could like beat Esperanto, that'd be really cool. And I'm like, okay, fair enough. So I'm like gonna write an intro to math book in English. And so right now what I'm going to do, and I'm trying to find because literally all math words are Greek or Latin, right? So and it's been a very fun exercise to go try to find like Middle English or archaic English.
Old English. Middle English already has a lot of French in it, good sir.
Oh, fair enough. So Old English.
English.
Well, so there is a word book that has been created by the community. It's got like 10,000 words in it. Goddamn, right? Of Anglish words. And so I am going through and I pulled it down from the Google Doc version, and I'm doing like Excel fucking searches in there. It feels very much probably like similar to a flavor of some of the work that you did as a grad student, right? Yeah. Where it's a lot of like, I have one spreadsheet over here where it's got a bunch of math words, and I'm slowly filling in like, oh, this word seems like it's a good correlation for a circle or a cone or a line or whatever, right? And then what was the other thing? So it's called Rhinecraft is the accepted English word for math. So I'm building my Rhinecraft word book.
Very nice. Yes, very nice. Well, it probably won't surprise you that the word book is the standard. Most Germanic languages, that's the word for dictionary, just so you know. They're just they're calquing German and Norwegian and Dutch and everything else. So it's fine.
For sure. Well, no, yeah. Well, what's really funny, right, is and this just shows you how like 1984 English has always been, right? Because as I'm going through like English words, where they are just words that are current day, right? It's like, oh, I guess other languages just get to have totally obvious words for all of their words, right? Because you're like, word book, really? Is it just a book of words? That seems too obvious. What's the trick, right? And I'm like, well, a dictionary in French or whatever the fuck other language is literally a word book too, right? It's an array of dictions, right? And you're like, oh, you're telling me that other languages don't have to manually memorize the definition of every fucking word? Like, it feels like a complete outrage, honestly.
Elliott, yes. For those of us in my field, I've known about English for a while. It's really fun. It's like a child at Christmas. It's cool to see you discover this. So yeah, Elliott's Elliott's going hard on the English. I am continuing to plan. We have some cool stuff coming up. So yeah, We'll do some more stuff, hopefully coming in the fall here with, like I said, more kind of just fun movies that I think don't get enough love. Hopefully going to do some stuff with actual linguistics, more actual linguistics, looking at different varieties of English, comparing and contrasting them using spectrograms, which should be fun with Mitch. And, hopefully Elliot and or some other people, I got to harangue you all. I love Halloween, do some spooky season stuff. Horror is great. So yeah, we'll get into all that.
I feel like horror is actually a fictional genre that the two of us can meet on. So
horror is just real life right now, but that's a topic probably for one of those episodes. It's just real life. Cool. Well, hey, everyone have a great weekend. Like, comment, subscribe, all the things, and we'll see you next time. Peace.